I once had an advisor tell me, well, I just want to wake up every morning with scheduled appointments with qualified millionaires that are ready to talk to me. And at that point, 5 or 6 years ago, I was like, well, dream big. Like, oh, that's a tall order. But I mean, we're at the point, and I think a lot of firms are now, where we're making that a reality.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Marketing Matchup. I'm Joe Anthony, your host, and the president, Gregory, an agency that works with some of the fastest moving and brightest minds in the wealth management and wealth tech arena. I'm always excited to do these podcasts when I get a chance to bring in smart, sharp people that are focused on growth and marketing like the guests we have today. We're making new friends today, folks. Sam and Tyler do not know each other, didn't even know they're going to be on today, as usual. But it's nice to make the connections. And let's start by introducing Samantha Allen. She's the Executive Vice President for Marketing at Merit Financial. And we have Tyler Resh, who's the Chief Growth Officer at SteelPeak Wealth. Two of you, welcome to the show.
Thanks,
Hello.
Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So we're going to have some fun today. But before we get into the Q&A, I want to ask you something I ask all our guests. Tell us your origin story. Tell us how you got to where you are. I say it very often. Our guests, people that are CMOs, Chief Growth Officers, Head of Sales, anything in financial services, there's a good chance they weren't betting on being in marketing for wealth management when they were a kid or in college. And so, Sam, ladies first, give us your origin story. How'd you get to where you are? Did you always dream to be in this seat?
Well, as you just said, of course not. No. But I will say that I did dream of being in this seat a little bit, in that I always knew that I wanted to do marketing at a high level of leadership. And so while the industry was not always clearly set, once I found the financial services world, I was very much locked in and wanted to stay. So I started my career in the agency world, specifically at some larger agencies focusing on B2C brands, a lot of travel and tourism, hospitality, quick serve restaurants. I've worked on Super Bowl campaigns, like really fun work, but I was really young. So it was kind of one of those where it's a great place to cut your teeth and gain a lot of experience, but I was working all the time, on the road all the time, and where you could burn out pretty quickly. And so at a couple different agencies around the country, and then I landed at an agency here in Omaha, Nebraska, and I did the big no-no, which is let a client hire you. And that client was a company that maybe you've heard of, TD Ameritrade. And so I went and joined their institutional team as their head of social media and search engine marketing. And honestly, probably would have retired from TD. I loved working there. Incredible culture, was just learning a lot, growing very quickly. And then ahead of the Schwab acquisition, kind of got coached by my mentor that maybe it was time to look at other opportunities. And she actually introduced me to my next role, which was with FICOM Partners. Spent a little bit of time with their team as their AVP of marketing. I can't even remember, meeting lots of people and working across the entire industry on all kinds of really, really interesting marketing problems, specifically in the RA world. And that led me to my next role. I spent a little bit of time at Carson Group, first as their VP of digital, and then kind of quickly expanded the role to eventually lead events, digital, I'm trying to think what else, PR, comms, creative content. It was VP of, or SVP of integrated marketing, I think was the role when I finally left about 4 years later and joined Merit Financial Advisors, where I am now their executive vice president of marketing. So I oversee all of the marketing team.
That's awesome. That's a lot of great experience to draw some perspective for today's conversation. So I appreciate that. So Tyler, give us your background. How'd you end up where you are today?
Yeah, I'm much like Sam. My path into this was not very direct. And in fact, when I graduated with a degree in international economics from UCLA, there was no such thing as entering into the wealth management space. It was still a burgeoning industry. So, like any good econ major, I was looking at the world of investment banking and consulting. And so I chose strategy consulting. I worked as a strategy consultant with a Bain-like startup here in Los Angeles. And my path ended up crossing, I ended up crossing paths, I should say, with a gentleman by the name of Dan Sievert, who many of you know as the founder of Echelon Partners. And he was telling me that he was going to start basically the first investment bank focused on the wealth management space. And this dates way back to 2001, 2002 timeframe. And when he was looking at the space and creating the company, we stayed in touch. And he was kind of telling me about this industry and some of the benefits of it and kind of how it looked and why it was this up incoming industry that was going to be doing a lot of great things, not just for the individuals that the advisors were serving, but also kind of changing the face of how financial advice was being given. Because again, the world, it's not too dissimilar from today, but much, much more sort of acute back then, where you had brokers that were basically the ones that were making financial decisions on behalf of clients. And so um, he asked me to join, and he actually brought me on as his first hire. And so I was the first official employee of Echelon Partners, and that's really where I cut my teeth in the space. And so working, alongside Dan and all the great clients that we served over that time, I was there for about 13 years. And what I saw repeatedly over and over again was the biggest driver of growth, or biggest driver of value within the industry is growth. And that's, really the main metric as we were doing valuations with all these companies. And many of these firms just didn't know kind of how to define growth, yet alone how to define marketing. And so, kind of like Sam, I was recruited away from Echelon to go join a firm, kind of sit in-house and build a marketing department from the ground up. And that was with First Foundation Advisors and First Foundation Inc. And that was an opportunity to really take everything that I learned at Echelon and put it into practice. And it was a little scary at the time because, at Echelon, we were giving advice and people were hiring us to give advice. And, we didn't always see the end results of the advice, like any, projects come and go, projects end, you do transactions and you kind of, you move on. But with First Foundation, I had to live with all the decisions that I was making. And so it was very interesting, to do that and to kind of see in practice. And again, it just reaffirmed that marketing needed a seat at the executive table. It needed a seat at the strategic table. Executives needed to, sort of notice what marketing was doing and understand it. And that was, sort of my calling card there at First Foundation, was to elevate the role of marketing. And that brought me to my current role here at SteelPeak, where again, marketing means different things to different people. It's a common refrain that I always say. And, I think SteelPeak really understands what marketing is, and they understand what growth is. And so what they were looking for in me and bringing me in is to sort of institutionalize that, really create some growth systems. And, I had this playbook that I had worked out at First Foundation, and I brought it with me over here. And that's, kind of where I got to where I am. But again, it was very circuitous. It was not very direct. And, the real impetus was the opportunity for this industry to elevate was within the marketing and growth ranks. And there really weren't people like Sam that were around that were helping firms do this back then. And so, I saw it as an opportunity. I myself really respect financial advisors, but I could never be a financial advisor. I don't have the patience to do it. But I do believe they're doing a really great service, particularly in the RIA model with the fiduciary standard of care. And so, my sort of altruistic angle on all of this is if I can help advisors serve end clients more through the work that I do, then, I feel good about the work that I'm doing as a career choice.
Well, and both really interesting backgrounds. I gotta say, but both of you're both have the combined experience where I wonder if, for me, my vector is different. 24 years ago, I got an offer to join Gregory as an intern on Christmas Eve, and I've never left, right? And so, uh,
Yeah.
I like to say I work with banks and wealth management firms. I worked for custodians before, and a lot of the same experience you might have gotten. But it's interesting to hear that, and I think most of the folks that are involved in marketing today, leading marketing efforts, growth efforts at wealth management firms, weren't in that seat 3, 5, 7 years ago. It's really remarkable. You think about
Mhm.
it. Um, from what I know about your two firms, if there was someone leading marketing 5 to 6 years ago, it probably was just one someone involved. There probably wasn't a team.
Right.
And now you're talking about, I mean, you use the phrase growth systems, Tyler. Guarantee you there wasn't an RIA smaller than 10 billion a few years ago, even mentioning the word growth system as part of what they're doing. The growth system was making sure that the lead advisors had enough referrals coming. That was the growth system, right?
That's
So
right. Yeah.
with that, let's dive into a couple of things today. So, one of the things that I always ask our guests, either on the front end or during the conversation, because I really think it's interesting. It's like there is a thing that drives most marketers. There's a bugaboo in their head that they either walked into the sun and they start thinking about, hey, if I get my hands on this, I want to fix this, or this is really important. I think we can really win here. Where is your North Star or focus for marketing? And Sam, I know you rattled off touching a lot of things in your career. I'm curious today, and I know the answer could shift in 6 months or might have been different 3 months ago, but what's driving your storytelling and growth objectives in marketing there at Merit?
Yeah, so it's interesting because you're right. Like if you look at my experience, it's doesn't look like a linear path. Like, I bounced around a little bit, but there was, if you were to look at my titles throughout the last, 15 years, there is one North Star, and that is digital. I would say that I was kind of born and raised into digital marketing. Whenever I'm asked, like, what's one thing you would tell a new marketer that's
Mhm.
joining the marketing world, I always tell them, never say no to anything in the first 2 years. My first 2 years of my career, I was all over the place. I was on video shoots in the South Dakota Badlands, chasing a buffalo herd and heels that I probably should have reconsidered given the assignment. Because they were like, we need an extra person on this video shoot or whatever. And I was like, sure, yes, I'll go. And what that taught me was that digital is what I'm best at and it's what I'm most passionate about. And so I would say that although the last 5 years I've expanded into obviously overall marketing leadership and overall marketing strategy, I think digital is obviously where so many things are headed. I think that is a massive portion of what it takes to be successful in the RA marketing world. While I truly believe you have to kind of be omnipresent and have all the things, kind of all the boxes checked in the digital world, provide an excellent online experience and in-person experience and community experience. That's definitely what I probably think about digital marketing more than a normal person really should.
So we're going to follow up on that digital point in a second, Sam. But Tyler, what's your North Star today? Where is your focus in terms of the growth efforts of the firm?
Yeah, it's probably based on my background as an investment banker and looking at firms from a valuation lens. It's really ensuring that everything that marketing does, my North Star is really ensuring everything that marketing and, these growth systems do creates enterprise value for the organization. And, it's a scary proposition to sort of go out on a limb and say that oftentimes because, as you guys can appreciate, sales has been, a word that gets, sort of a negative connotation in the industry. And that's by design. I mean, it's by reason because a lot of the financial advisors that are now some of the most prolific advisors that we know came from industries like insurance and, the brokerage world where sales was a tactic. But if you think of sales as, and growth more specifically as the way you create enterprise value, then everything sort of coalesces around that, meaning you can serve more clients. Okay. So that's like the first thing. So that's great. You serve more clients, you do more good for clients. But then if you think of sales as also building systems within the organization to do more for clients, then you do things like we talk about called deeper share of wallet, right? That's an industry
Mhm.
term that a lot of us know and use, but you can't do that unless you're selling. You can't do that unless you're growing. You can't do that unless you're actively pursuing different things that drive enterprise value. And so my North Star is enterprise value when it comes to looking at the company. I would say there's another area where if I look out the other window and I see another star, the other star would be education. So education is super important. There's, we all know sort of the statistics around financial illiteracy in the country, and we do ourselves a disservice because we don't teach it at the elementary level, we don't teach it in the middle school, we don't teach it in high school. You don't learn it really until maybe college, and you don't really learn it unless you become a CFP. And no one's doing that unless they're pursuing a career path within wealth management. So it's our job as financial advisors, wealth management firms, RIAs to be the purveyor of education. And so, the medium that Sam's talking about, digital, super smart. And that's how we sort of get that in front of people. And so we're just looking at it. So when I look at it specifically, it's enterprise value and education.
Well, so that ties back nicely into the point Sam brought about digital, right? I think
Mhm.
today, most, if not all, of the educational efforts that growing firms have at scale are driven by digital. And I say at scale because there are firms that still do, I'll call hand-to-hand combat educational events for their clients, but those are really difficult to replicate. And I think, yeah, so, but going back to that, I think the idea of providing education digitally is something I think, maybe 20 years ago, the previous generation of the RIA builders would not have thought about as being something doable. But Sam, so I want to ask this question. So you think about the education piece and you think about those conversation starters and how it plays out in the world of email marketing, the GEO, website build out, whatever you have to do that gets it. Are you finding that the opportunity to educate really comes down to specific audiences, or the opportunity to educate comes down to answering specific questions?
That's a good I would say, and I don't wanna, give, like, an easy answer here, but it's a
Right.
little bit of both, and actually, we've found we have, a really strong content strategy at Merit, and a big part of that is building our content around it's the very, old school hub and spoke model, but one of our biggest kinda distribution channels that has become almost, one of the core pillars to informing, like, what content we create, how it's optimized, all of that is our YouTube channel, and it's exactly for the reason you just said, like, is it the type of content, the audience, it's combining both of those, and we have found that, there are really, people who meet our target audience that really, sophisticated, high net worth, top earners, they're on YouTube and they are watching content that is purely educational. And that is if you were to go on the Merit YouTube channel right now, that's kind of the secret sauce of it is that if you watch Eric, our content director and our talent on that channel, he doesn't ask for anything in return. The content, he is just a steady, reliable source of excellent information. There's one CTA in the entire video, and he produces videos every single week, sometimes twice a week. And we've got 70,000 followers. We strategically to get referrals every single week from the channel that are qualified and move through the sales process pretty quickly. So I know you said sales is a dirty word. You're right. It is, but that it's a relationship building tool. They feel like they know us by the time that they get on the phone with one of our relationship building team members. And so it's definitely and it dovetails really well into where all of you mentioned GEO, generative engine optimization. That's been on my mind for several years now already. I remember still printing off the first when they first released the academic research around GEO. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I was giving a keynote at a marketing conference. And I brought it home. I printed it, brought it home, and I had my highlighter. I was sitting on my couch, like highlighting it that night after the kids went to bed. My husband was like, What are you doing? What is that? Are you working?" He's always like, "You working at night?" And I was like, "Oh, it's the first academic research on generative engine optimization." And he was like, I mean, he knew that he married a nerd, but like that was really but video and indexing on video, especially on huge search engines like YouTube, is huge. And so making sure that you're creating the right content, it's got that educational no requests. Not to say that content marketing is dead, it's definitely not, but the whole, let me give you a taste. I'm gonna drive you back to a landing page where you're gonna have to give me your email and then you'll actually get the good stuff. I'm finding more and more that not that content's commoditized, but like you do have to give away a lot of the good stuff for free. And if you do that consistently and in a place where they're already looking for you, they're much more likely to go back to your site and then say, all right, not only am I gonna give you your email, I'm gonna give you an hour of my time so I can hear and learn if the services are really right for me.
Well, so and Sam, I think that's an amazing approach, and I'm gonna come back to that. So there's another piece of that YouTuber story I want to draw out here for the conversation.
Okay.
But Tyler, you talked about education. How would you answer that question in terms of when you're approaching education? Is it through the lens of
Yeah,
answering the questions people are asking, or the audiences you're trying to engage? And I know it could be a little bit of both. I'm curious to see what your take is.
well, yeah, and I would say, if you're an RIA of scale or you're a growth-minded RIA, you're appreciative of the fact that for the first time in the history of the United States, we have 4 to 5 generations in the working force or in sort of the ideal client profile set that we potentially could be serving. And so if you think of it that way, then you think of, okay, well, you want to be omnipresent. You want to be in all these different channels where people are consuming information. And so the distribution nodes are really, really important. And Sam's totally right. Like right now, video I mean, specifically YouTube is incredibly ubiquitous, and you can basically see an ICP, an ideal client profile of every generational cohort interacting with YouTube. And you can't say that about other things. You can't say that about TikTok. You can't say that about white papers. And I love first, I just want to go back to this this concept of Sam printing something off about AI tools. That's like such a
I
great.
understand the irony. I do, I love my
Yeah, it's
paper
so
product.
ironic and
I love
fantastic.
it despite being a digital person, but yeah.
Yeah. And so, but Joe, when I think about, how we're producing content, we're thinking of life trigger events. So, you're kind of thinking of things that happen in these generational cohorts. And, it's not as easy to say things that happen in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's more life stages because, now we have people that are retiring in their 40s. We have people that are working well into their 70s. So if you're talking to a corporate executive, you can't necessarily triangulate on age, but you certainly can triangulate on what their needs are. And so we base all of our content on those trigger events with their needs. And like Sam, we're trying to produce content that doesn't, it's not gated. It's basic, which means, they don't have to enter in emails. They don't need to, get permission to do it. They're finding us, they're consuming the content, and we're just sort of nurturing them along.
Well, and I think the point you're making, Tyler, about the multiple generations that fit into the buying audience, I think that there's been a real change in terms of how firms are marketing. It wasn't, I mean, I started doing this in 2002, and almost 95%, if not 100%, was trying to get to that audience right when they're about to either sell their business or roll over their 401k and retire, right? It's all about financial planning, wealth management for the purpose of enabling retirement. Like, and that's when you got your advisor and you were 63 and whatever, right? Now it's people want financial advice because they have life decisions to make and they're
That's
looking
right.
at that. And so they're considering wealth management support earlier. So, and obviously a lot of wealth has been created, whether it's with things like crypto or startups or real estate. And so you have all these different issues and triggers and opportunities and also perspectives on wealth. We all know that if you got your first $1 million at 28, you probably feel a little different about it than someone who might have retired and saw the rollover. It was a $2 million rollover and felt like they finally hit it, right? And so the
Sure.
person who's wealthy at 20 something might have more of a different view on their experience with wealth and the questions they have. So absolutely, I could see it triggering so much. Let me pause here for a second though, because I like to sometimes tell my audience why I picked people to be together on the pod. And I think what's really interesting here is that for those of you that aren't following the industry as closely as I like to follow it, and Sam, you talked about being a nerd. When it comes to sort of the inner workings of the industry, I am a nerd in this way. Both of your firms have dual audiences. You're trying to bring on other advisors. You're also working feverishly to grow organically. Both of you are part of what I'll call networks or complexes of firms. SteelPeak is backed by Emigrant. Merit is with Constellation right now. And so it's this dynamic you see growing in the industry where if two marketers are going to have at least a vaguely similar perspective on what their firm's needs are, the two of you match up. But I bring that up for another reason. Most marketers or people in the growth seat are looking at their jobs primarily through one window or the other. Like, hey, we need to attract more advisors, or we need to support our advisors' organic growth. Talk to me a little bit about your perspectives, how that gets worked in your organization. How do you create those priorities for your organization? Tyler, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, sure. And you're right. We're looking at, Steel Peak is looking at the world of growth across different systems, and that's a term I like to use. One of the systems is an inorganic growth engine, which is predominantly trying to attract advisors to join Steel Peak. And what's interesting is the inorganic and the organic kind of go hand in glove. And what I mean by that is, in order for us to speak the language of an advisor that we're trying to attract. And by definition, that's a growth minded advisor who's looking, it feels like he or she is kind of tapped out of their existing organization. They can't necessarily rise the ranks. They might have a team that's bigger than them that's never going to retire. They said they were going to retire, they're never going to retire. From a sort of age cohort, they're, mid career, maybe in their mid 40s, early 50s, and they still have, a decade plus of potential ahead of them, but again, they're stymied for some reason or another. So we're speaking specifically to that ICP, that advisor. And so when advisors talk to us, we can talk the language of what we do with our advisors who have joined us previously around the organic side. And that's sort of like the lightning in a bottle conversation where they're saying, "Oh my gosh, if I leave my current firm, I'm foregoing a lot of things that I've built here. But it's worth it because I'm going to a firm that's going to invest in me and the growth of the firm and and my practice specifically." And what we're looking at there is kind of this dialogue of we want our advisors to be the ones that attract new clients to the firm. So we do everything we can in the courtship process of converting prospects to clients. Once those clients join Steel Peak, they do so largely because of the advisor, right? This is still a people-driven business. You can sort of get away with that if you're a, a massively large organization and you have some really great technology. But at the end of the day, people are hiring an advisor. So we recognize that. We want advisors to join us for that reason. But once the client comes on to Steel Peak, we put all of our arms around them at the firm level. And we try to do as much as we can around them to facilitate conversations with their advisor about other things that they might need, whether it's tax consulting services or estate planning services. Maybe they've graduated into a family office situation. We can help with that as well. So a lot of different areas. So when we talk to advisors, we're saying, come join us. And we have some credibility when we have that conversation because we have this organic growth engine that's working as well. So they kind of go hand in glove, as I had mentioned.
Well, and I think that the other point I'll make on that, when you're talking about going hand in glove, I think it's really important. My view has always been, if you're not a strong organic grower, you probably shouldn't be in the business of acquisitions. And it's really difficult to be looking at selling yourself if you're not growing either, right? And so, whether it's on the front end of a transaction, whether it's on an aftermath of a transaction, we have to justify the deal. I mean, obviously, they should be working together, and I think, which is why you use the word systems, Tyler. I think the idea of inorganic and organic growth working together, it's got to be thought of that way.
It does. And, there's so many firms that are buying other practices. And when it's all said and done, 1+1 still equals 2. And that's not the promise of an investment banker. The promise is 1+1 equals 3. And so they're sitting around scratching their head saying, gosh, we just spent all this time and capital to acquire a firm, and all we got was the assets that came over. And what you really want is you want 1+1 equal to 3. And the only way you can do that is if you have a growth engine to plug them into afterward. Now, there's a lot of other elements too, there's the communication side of things, which I know you're deeply involved with. You have to communicate this properly. You have to set expectations up front, during, and after. And so there's a lot more that goes into it, but growth is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Sam, how would you answer that question in terms of serving those two masters of the advisor audience and the organic growth beast?
Yeah, so that actually was part of my decision to come to Merit. When I sat down with Kaylin and was talking about the opportunity, I was like, I really don't want to give up working on both audiences and both strategies, because I do feel I've been in a world, at TD Ameritrade is so huge that there's the institutional side and there was the retail side. And I was actually, there's a couple people on the marketing team on the institutional side that were actively working with their retail counterparts. And I was one of them. I had a very close relationship with the social team over on the retail side. But it was very siloed, and that was like the opposite of what I wanted moving forward, because I started to see like the inefficiencies of it, and not only at the like duplicative and spend level, but at the strategic level as well. And so that has been an exciting part of my role at Merit, is that I get to, as Tyler said, this is important work that our advisors do. I want to spread that work to as many folks as possible. And so the investor marketing side, the organic growth side, it's like 50-50 with my role. I spend a lot of time on that. We approach our organic growth in terms of, we call them organic growth tracks or channels. We have a steering committee for it and the subcommittees that kind of own the strategy. And we're very analytical in it. We, invest, test, optimize, and then decide where we want to go from there. And then at the top level, we kind of have the overall organic growth, the things you have to do, just kind of humming. That way we can stay agile and really get the most out of our teams. And then on the advisor marketing side or the M&A side, while I really believe in the work of investor marketing and I feel like it's very important and obviously very important to growth and enterprise value, I just love working with advisors. When
Mhm.
I was at there are advisors that I formed relationships with when I was at TD Ameritrade. They were just at Link. They had a question about digital. I sat down with them for coffee. And then to this day, if I'm out in New York City, I'm going and getting dinner with them or going to a hockey game with them. So I love working with advisors and I want to help them grow their business. And I'm very, very happy that that is 50% of my role at Merit is not only crafting the strategies to tell our story effectively to advisors, bring them into the M&A decision-making process, but then all the way through the transition, my team walks side by side with them on what does it take to really not only sunset and bring over your brand to the Merit brand. What are you doing that's working really well that we can adopt and scale out to the rest of our team? And then what can we take off your plate so that way you're really working on the things that you want to be working on and where your time is best spent? We really do, similar to what Tyler said, it's kind of not to use a very Midwestern saying, but kind of like soup to nuts. I mean, I once had an advisor tell me, well, I just want to wake up every morning with scheduled appointments with qualified millionaires that are ready to talk to me. And at that point, 5 or 6 years ago, I was like, well, dream big. Like that's a tall order. But I mean, we're at the point, and I think a lot of firms are now, where we're making that a reality. We have the
Mhm.
marketing side at the top and the mid funnel working hand in hand really closely with our business development team. I've never had a more harmonious relationship with business development than I do at Merit. They're my best friends and partners. And so they're getting on the phones right away, qualifying, kind of providing that concierge service to get the lead qualified and scheduled with an advisor that matches their preferences and where we feel like there could be a successful relationship. And then we're tracking everything through the close rate to make sure that we can optimize on the top end as we move forward. So it's been fun to build. I would call it a little bit of a system as well, but always a ever improving process too.
So, Sam, you said something about the alignment with sales and the business development team that I want to come back to in a second. But I do want to go back to another thing. You mentioned Eric and the YouTube situation. I think this is a
Hmm.
very cool example of how deal making can somehow bring talent to help grow the firm in. And when I
Yeah.
met you at the conference in Boston, it was Jamie Hopkins and Martina from your team and I were talking. You're saying, "Hey, it's an exciting deal we're announcing this week," and either just was announced or about to be announced. You mentioned the YouTube audience. It's fascinating where you're importing this talent. And I think the question I want to ask you both is when you're bringing on advisors that has something good working in marketing, how do you, and again, maybe Eric's situation is a good live example, but how do you import that and make it Merit or Steel Peak, right? Like, how do you adopt that and work it in? And what does it also say about the nature of how you look at growth and marketing for your organizations? Sam, answer since we start with Eric, but I'd love to hear Tyler's take
Yeah.
on it as well.
Sure. So I think that there has to be like an openness there. And I think actually when we talked about it, I was pretty nervous. Just because that is such a massive undertaking. Like Eric and his team had built something really special with the YouTube channel. And it wasn't accidental. He is absolutely an expert when it comes to content marketing on YouTube. And his secret to success is really having like a maniacal focus on it. Like I remember
Mhm.
my first conversation with him. I was like, "Well, what are you doing on email and stuff?" And he was like, "Sam, nothing." He's like, "I until YouTube is like absolutely optimized, I'm not going to dilute my focus by adding an email campaign that maybe will definitely not perform as well as YouTube is right now." And I was just like in awe. I was like, that, I mean, genius, right? And boy, I wish I had that ability to focus on one thing. But I was really nervous about rebranding the channel and bringing it over to Merit and not losing followers, not losing trust. And of course, during the transition, we did have like a little bit of a slowdown in terms of like lead throughput. But I'm very proud to say, on the merit of not only Eric, the internal marketing team at Merit, and our partners at Podpony, which is another kind of agency multimedia team here in our financial services space. We were able to make that transition without losing hardly any followers, and we're now back on the gaining followers side of things. So coming up on a year in a couple months, and it's looking really, really positive. But I would say that in terms of just bringing in a firm that has an established marketing strategy that's working really well, let them be the experts and apply your what I think is beautiful about the way that Eric and I work together is that, like I said, he is the YouTube expert. There is no world where I would sit down and say, I think this is the way to do things. I've managed YouTube channels, I've managed podcasts in the past in my career, but always at like a higher leadership level, not really in the weeds with the content and thumbnails and the SRT files and all the things that truly make a channel work and grow. Um, but what I can offer him is how can we scale it? How can we increase the throughput? Let's optimize the landing page. Let's A/B test. Let's heat map. Let's apply. And then can we connect it to our larger network of advisors so that way they're benefiting from the lead throughput as well? So um, it's kind of working in concert together, but I would definitely say like the last thing any marketing leader should do when you have someone like that or a firm coming in that has something that's working is say like, well, we know
Mhm.
best or no, this is the way we do things because I think you definitely lock yourself down and could miss massive opportunities to take something that's working and scale it across your organization for success.
Well, that's a awesome case study, and I think it's something that bears watching because there's inevitably other people out there that have their influencers or content creators in their own right as advisors that are looking to see how to do it successfully. Do I want to give up my autonomy in doing something like this? It's scary because if you build something and all of a sudden does it slow down when you do this, it seems like you all have done a nice job transitioning that. Tyler, I want to get your feedback on something else Sam said. I mentioned the alignment with business development sales with the rest of the marketing stack. I think it's one of the things that's also a symptom of the fact that we're seeing more empowered growth and marketing leaders in the C-suite over the last 3 to 5 years, where part of that is yes, CMOs have a seat at the table, chief growth officers have been installed, but it also means there has got to be a better alignment with the not just the brand story, but how it rubber meets the road with sales. How does that play out with SteelPeak in terms of how you align between the biz dev side of things as well as the communications and other marketing aspects?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it does sort of dovetail into what Sam was talking about in terms of, bringing someone on that had something else to offer and having this openness and open-mindedness around and incorporating that into the organization. And what I mean specifically is if you think of content as sort of the trust building factor of everything that we're doing from an outbound perspective, then if you're viewing it as like a traditional funnel where it starts at the top and it gets nurtured to a point of action, that's a tried and true marketing strategy. I'd say that's fine. But if that's your only perspective on things, then I think you're missing opportunities like Sam saw with the YouTube opportunity. And what this looks like then in practice is if you think of content and you think of engagement between business development and marketing and really the entire organization as a loop where people are, circling around your organization and they're coming in at different nodes and they're seeing different perspectives of your firm from different areas. Again, whether that's a white paper that they print out and read in the evening and their spouse makes fun of them for doing so, or they're, looking at your firm through TikTok videos that you're putting out or YouTube or more than just traditional sort of blog posts. People are seeing your organization from this like loop perspective. And if you're a marketer and you're growth minded and you're thinking about your organization from a loop, then you're not shoehorning people into like, this is the next step in the process. And this has to be the next step in the process. And this after that has to be the very next step in the process. And again, technology has afforded us the ability to sort of A/B test and kind of move around within that typical funnel. But again, the loop from my experience has been a better way to look at it. And we have business development people that are helping depending on where someone comes in with respect to this entry point into the organization. And they're constantly working alongside our marketing folks who are out there putting out the content, setting the campaigns, and doing some of the analytics on what's happening. And so, you know, the lines have become so blurred between marketing and business development, in my opinion. I know maybe if you had a larger organization, you could probably build out, different cohorts of people within the organization that are doing specific tasks. but at the end of the day, we're not selling sunglasses. We're not selling shoes. We're selling financial advice. It's very, very personable, and it has to be based on trust. And, for us, we work together very closely. Business development and marketing are almost synonymous here at SteelPeak, even though we know there's a functional role that we each play. And that's largely because, again, we're not looking for a point in time when someone wants to like make a purchase. We're not giving 20% off coupons, via email so that they take action. We're trying to nurture them, build the trust, and the sales cycles, as you guys all know and all the listeners know, is very long in this industry. And as a result, you can't have this sort of bifurcation of sales and marketing.
So Tyler, you said something that is changing my next question, just because I think it's appropriate time to jump into this. And you mentioned we're selling trust, right? It's
Mhm.
not we're not selling sunglasses, are we? Right? No,
That's
we're
right.
not selling sneakers. We're selling trust. And it's interesting. We did a survey of 500 of our contacts, some of our clients, some people we know. I wish I could tell you all 500 wrote back, but 200 something people responded to the survey in terms of what they're spending money on the next 2 years. And the 3 areas where they're doing more investments, and this is music to my ears: public relations,
Mhm.
video content, and testimonials, and getting around arms around that. Those are all about cultivating trust and being more connected, credibility, thought leadership, third party validation, social proof, whatever you want to talk about. And it's because it underscores one thing. There's been an ecosystem that's grown up around to be able to help firms accelerate their PR profile. There's an ecosystem that's grown up to help firms adapt to this world of testimonials, Wealth Tender and Testimonial IQ, et cetera, et cetera. And we're at a point now where obviously almost every advisor firm has somebody that's a YouTube star like Eric, or wannabe at least. There's video content, right? And so I look at that point and say, hey, right now there's more tools than ever to address the trust equation. Um, Take a look at your firms. Sam, I'll start with you. Like, where are you investing to seize the moment on that? Is there anything new? I mean, the YouTube example is a great one. Anything new or different you feel like your firm's putting into action? Like, are you exploring more with testimonials or Google reviews, for example? Tell our audience where a firm like yours that's really on the move is spending its time.
Oh gosh, I have such a not well, kind of exciting answer. I feel like you're looking for something exciting and kinda
No,
cutting
just
edge and sexy, but
no, it's just your firm's on the move. You're doing something right. Tell us what you're
we
doing.
are, we are. A couple things. So I would say that we're in the process of getting like technology in place and then systems and processes in place that are going to help us scale and grow faster. I feel like one thing when it comes to firms that are doing M&A and bringing on new teams, where they can trip up a little bit is not is staffing based on like a gut feeling over like actual numbers. And so we can bring on a really transformational deal and be like, "Ooh, I feel like this is gonna overwhelm marketing." Or we can say this firm falls into a category of firms or of our offices that we know it takes X amount of hours per month to support marketing-wise to hit our growth goals. And do we have that capacity on the team right now? So that's kind of on the structure and process that we're putting into place. We're also investing in marketing technology. So we are moving marketing automation platforms right now to enable almost a integrated marketing like level at the very top that strategically can build out campaigns, templates, content, event kits that can then be quickly pulled down and personalized at the local level by those regional marketing teams. So again, lots of not super exciting structural pieces, but elevating our marketing technology is also directly connected to a more exciting kind of buzzword topic that everyone's talking about, which is artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence for specifically generative engine optimization. I do really believe that that is the direction that everything's headed right now. I feel like we went through a period where everyone was like, it's going to be voice engines. And then obviously like the zero click SEO panic. And I was still in the agency world when that happened. So it hit me very deeply because it was truly a problem for, someone who's booking a vacation or looking at if they're going to eat at Who Hot for dinner that night. But when it comes to our world, I mean, Tyler said it best, like the sales cycle is long. There's a lot of trust. No one's going to make the decision to move their assets and work with a different financial advisor or start working with a financial advisor, period, based on one Google search. So having the right marketing technology, having an omnipresent content strategy is really helping us make sure that we're showing up in all the places to inform that long sales cycle and drive conversion. And part of that, specifically to generative engine optimization, is making really specific updates to our website. So we're in the process of updating all of our location pages right now. When I started, we had beautiful location pages representing, merit across the map. But if you landed on any of them, you would see the location itself, maybe a picture of the office, the team, and then kind of the standard, here's our capabilities boilerplate, which is great content, but it was the same on every page. And what we've learned is as we bring on these new teams, some of them have specific niches that they work with. Some of the advisors have specific experience that they want to really have show through on their location page. So we're updating all of those pages to almost be little microsites or little micro landing pages that have the advisor is sitting next to our regional marketing managers and deciding, do I want a video on here? Do I want to have a certain lead magnet or a certain kind of survey on this page? Do I want the imagery to be different because I really work with first responders, and so let's update the imagery so that way it feels really personal for the advisor. It's a better experience for clients and prospects alike. But then, as you know, on the generative engine side of things, you're getting very diversified content on all of your pages, and it feels localized. It feels very specific to the person that's searching, and that's really helping us show up when those searches happen.
Tyler, I don't know about you, but Sam was setting us up for a boring answer, and then she just went off and said,
She
walk
kind of
through
nailed it there at the end,
Well,
right?
that's
10
kind
or
of it.
12
know.
The
different.
first half was boring, right? Like, I mean, building out
Well,
that
and that's
system is not
yeah,
super fun, but it's important.
right. And it's so much part of what we have to do is we have to build this structural integrity around, what we're trying to capture at the home office level, for lack of a
Mhm.
better description. And that does include doing things like making sure your email marketing platform is up to snuff, make sure your website is doing the right thing. There is one area of search engine optimization that I believe is still not dead, and that's local search.
Yeah.
And so investing in these local business units and these local locations and having these landing pages, it's a very smart strategy, and we've seen a lot of success with it as well. But as we look at what we're trying to build and sort of the lens through which I'm looking at the next 6, 9, 12 months of opportunity for us, it's really around two fundamental things, and it's largely because of what we've been talking about. That is gathering the right data from wherever somebody engages with you. And, Joe, you think about how you're coaching firms to have an online presence, to make sure that they're in the media, to make sure that they are, telling a good story and it's getting picked up in the media. Well, what happens if it gets picked up in the media and it never gets dumped into a data set at the firm, right? Then there's no actionable plan that can be taken. And so ensuring that we're collecting information from where everyone is engaging, wherever they might be engaging with us. Again, we use the examples of YouTube and TikTok. It could be downloadable white papers. It could be a media hit in a major publication. It could be a media hit in a trade publication. It's all building trust and credibility across, this lifespan of trying to convert folks to join us or to hire us. And so that trust and credibility halo can only be done if the data is there to support it and to make actionable decisions. And so we're investing there. The other area where we're investing is we believe that sort of the modern day advisor needs to be an influencer, or a finfluencer, as we like to call it. And so they're the best purveyors of the educational advice. If you just do a search right now to get some help on financial services, and we always told the story when I was at the bank, working with the bank as well, is people go out of their way to not talk to a banker. Like they would feel much more confident getting their results from a Reddit thread or, what historically was a Google return search. Now I'm sure that's even being driven more and more by AI. Well, what needs to happen, and this is a call to action to every advisor that might be listening to this podcast, is you need to take ownership of the educational delivery. And the only way you can do that is if you're out there putting content out, whether that's on LinkedIn, which is very safe and an easy place to be, or you might need to push on compliance and your legal team to make sure you can have a safe place to do it on TikTok, because that might be where your ICP is. But we need more advisors to step up and do more of that work. And we recognize that. And we want to invest in our advisors here at SteelPeak to have that opportunity. By the way, they would never have that opportunity at a major brokerage firm. There's just too much regulation there. There's
Mhm.
too much compliance around it. And typically the way they solve for it at those firms is, it's sort of binary. It's all or nothing. And most firms choose nothing. Whereas there, we know that there's some gray area there. There's some areas where you can operate safely in the video world, putting out daily content, or at least, 2 or 3 times a week content, and still be totally compliant. And so we have a great compliance team here that thinks about that and helps us with that. But in terms of what we're looking at investing in, it is sort of, kind of becoming a modern day media company, and having this media aspect to our business so that we can invest in our advisors so they can be the ones that are influencing people around very, very important topics, wherever that trigger event might occur for the end client.
I
Well,
have
and
to say, like, I agree with that so much. The One of my, like, soapboxes that I'll get on every now and then, and I won't today, but it's just that social media was built for people to talk to people, and there was a bit of a heyday in, like, the early 2000s where brands almost ruined it for us, and,
Yeah.
it was so great if a brand, like, tweeted back at you, but it slowly turned into, like, all you were seeing was brand stuff, and so while it's very important to have, like, the merit profiles on social are important, I am a big, big fan of advisors that wanna be on LinkedIn, Facebook, any of those places, creating their own content, and any support that you can give them, I think is huge, so
Yeah. And as much as I, kind of poke fun at the fact that we're not selling sunglasses and sneakers, it is a place where we can take a page out of their playbook and really elevate what we're doing with respect to ratings and reviews and forums and discussions, and testimonials are sort of like you know table stakes. Like, of course you're gonna have testimonials. Like, you serve
Mhm.
people. You're in the professional services business. People have an opinion about how they think about your firm. So let them voice that opinion, but take it to the next level now. Now, integrate that into a community, integrate that into a Reddit thread, integrate that into Google reviews that go, deeper or broader, I should say, maybe not deeper, but broader with respect to that concept of testimonials.
so going back, because this is a great discussion, but I want to go back to something Sam mentioned in terms of the conversation around GEO, generative optimization. We call it AEO, GEO, LLM optimization, whatever you want to call it. We're all talking about the same thing. It's how do you make sure you show up at the right place when people go to ChatGPT or Perplexity and so forth. And my business partner actually spoke in Davos beginning of 2025 on this topic of AI and communications. And something he was saying in that forum as part of that conversation was that in the world of communications and marketing, the arrival of GEO in terms of that being a relevant thing to consider really is a galvanizing force and making other aspects of marketing that may have felt tired or less exciting more relevant again. And that goes in our world of financial services. That is publicity. Publicity is way more relevant. Those rankings, you say, why am I spending this time and energy being ranked on the Forbes list and the FA magazine list and this and that? That plays in. It even makes the Google reviews and testimonials something newer even stand out more. It also makes involvement in things like getting involved with Smart Asset and places like that are referring advisors and on and on and on, right? And so it's one of these interesting things that now you have something that's measurable and that ties a lot of things together and make it more relevant. It was so much so an epiphany in the response we got after those comments he made in Davos that we spent the first half of this year building something called a Gregory Influence Engine, where it's our own technology. We built it to be able to synthesize the output from the 7 largest LLMs out there. And so yes, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, et cetera, helping brands coalesce and understand what it is that's happening to their brand, what prompts are showing up for, how they stack up versus competitors. And it's become a powerful thing, a guiding force. It's like another new tool for advisors and firms that are supporting them in their marketing growth to be able to understand how they're showing up. But what I bring this all up in a long way of saying, it really validates the points you're making about having a voice on social. It really validates the points you're making about having relatable content, like the video content with some of the transcripts or bullet points, or adding a TLDR at the top end of a blog post. I mean, all these little things that, we wonder why we're doing them before. Now it's validating. And to the point, we also now need a small army of marketers that are adapted to this style to help firms sort of live in this new world order. And so one of my last questions we'll get to before our final one, I want the two of you to weigh in on this, is how do we get more talented marketers to choose these jobs that we all have? What's your take on it? Do you think we got the tipping point yet where it's pop culture cool to say you're helping a wealth management firm? What do we got to do there? Tyler, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this conversation or this topic because it's a conversation that we're having as an industry, but it's largely at the top of the industry. And what I mean by that is we're talking about it from the perspective of trying to replace these tens of thousands of advisors that are retiring out of the space or moving out of the space, and we're trying to backfill with young talent and giving them sort of a career path within the industry. And I think that's fantastic. What I think it stops short on is, well, what happens if we attract top talent out of top universities into our industry and they don't want to be a financial advisor? Like, what do we do with them now? So maybe the career path is they become an investment manager. Okay, that's good too. We need great, talented investment managers. But let's start thinking about the other functional areas that now exist within these companies, our companies specifically, where you can go into, maybe you want to go into regulatory and compliance. Maybe you want to go into operations. Maybe, and this is to answer your question, you want to go into marketing. And that's where I think we just need to present these career paths to these people that are attracted to our space. I don't think we'll get away from the fact that people are attracted to wealth management because of investing and the markets. I think that's still sort of a core part of it. I think it's really challenging to try to take people from outside of our industry, bring them here. So maybe they're really, really successful at Oakley. And I'm not picking on Oakley. I'm saying like they're really good at Oakley. Or maybe, the other one that people like to talk about is if you know the Ritz-Carlton way, you can come into the wealth management space and be very successful. Now, of course, there's great hallmarks of success of, learning from the Ritz-Carlton way or the Marriott way or whatever it might be, where you are bettering your delivery, the customer experience, the client experience, everything like that. But what if we attracted people that were, keen on the markets, keen on understanding investing, keen on helping individuals, but don't want to be a financial advisor? That's where I think if we show them what we can do here, and I think it's helping that we're, doing things that are a lot cooler than just white papers. I think, we have some really cool designs on websites if you look across the top firms. And I think what you can tell a lot of these people is, hey, there's opportunity. There's 16,000 RIAs. Not everyone is a Barron's Top 100 by definition. And as a result, you can go help these other firms do some really cool things, implementing things that, are being done in other industries. So I think it's incumbent upon us as an industry, it's incumbent upon us as leaders in the industry to show people that there is a career path within an organization like ours that doesn't always have to end as being a financial advisor. And there's other areas where they can add value, and specifically marketing.
And then, Sam, how would you address that? How do we get more capable marketers like yourself in the driver's seat saying, I want to do the financial marketing piece?
Yeah, yeah. I would say I'll tell you what I'm doing, because I am similar, like trying to hit it on both sides. I guess I have a two-pronged strategy on this. The first is exactly what Tyler's saying. I'm involved in, I know you mentioned Jamie earlier, good friend of mine, and I'm involved in his nonprofit, the FinServe Foundation, as their head of mentorship. For a couple of reasons. Obviously, mentorship has been instrumental in my career to this day. I have several mentors that help me with decision making, feedback, all of the things that, a growing professional needs. And then also at the point now where I'm trying to actively give back through mentorship through FinServe, but also as, being one of the board members who's not an advisor, who is a marketer, and not saying that we actively bring in students into FinServe that want to be marketers, but if we have someone who's exploring the field and finds that that is the path, that I'm there and that I'm a resource to them. So that's one side of it within the industry itself. And then the other side of it for me is, I mentioned being a nerd and being so passionate about marketing in general that, again, it's something that I think about on the weekends, at night. And I'm very active in the community for just marketing in general. I speak at marketing conferences kind of around the country. And then also here specifically in the Midwest, in the Omaha community, the Sioux Falls, South Dakota community, Minneapolis, Denver, being a part of marketing organizations, speaking at different meetings and events. and really trying to cultivate. I feel like when you get to like the higher levels of marketing leadership, you really have to have industry specific experience to be able to step in and lead. But at the lower levels, the coordinator, specialist, sometimes
Mhm.
strategist levels, I love to bring in talent from other industries. I feel like it breathes a breath of fresh air, brings in additional ideas and perspectives that maybe we haven't thought of. And so that's just a strategic thing that I try to do. And luckily, I do have the benefit of being here in Omaha, which I consider to be a small mecca of financial services. We have a lot of really great companies here. So I can point, to the TD Ameritrade building or the now Schwab building. And that's a recognizable landmark here, or the Mutual of Omaha Tower, the First National Bank of Omaha, the largest privately held bank in the country. It's all based here in Omaha. So when I go and talk to these younger marketers, it's easy to say like you could work at this very large established um, company within our local community. I know that that's not the case everywhere, but that's something that is definitely worked for me in the past, and it's helped me to cultivate not only a financial services marketing community, but also a marketing community in general.
Yeah,
I think you talk about something good, Joe, if you don't mind if I just to comment on it, is that, the industry our industry is still relatively unknown. I think, we're growing up, we're becoming a little bit more known every now and then, but we're still shadowed, even if you put us in the sector of financial services, which is, what, a quarter of the economy, we're still shadowed by the large financial institutions out there, and it's largely because we're not sponsoring um, football stadiums, basketball arenas. We're not running Super Bowl ads. I mean, I think TD got pretty close to it. Obviously, Schwab is there, but we're not even TD or Schwab, right? We're independent RIAs that are, like I said, 16,000 strong or so, but people still don't really know what we do. So we need to continue to tell the story and how great this industry is. And it really is an industry, and this speaks to bringing on the next gen of talent. It's an industry where you can have a very, very good career and do good work, meaning you can do good. So
Yeah.
specifically, you're helping people with really complex financial situations, or you're helping people get set off on the right foot with respect to investing. And if you think of it that way, it's a very altruistic industry as well. And it's one of the few where you can have a very, very good living. There's very good careers that have been made in wealth management, and you can do good by society.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we've done at Gregory is that we've had a junior associate program for years where we bring students that are want to be involved in the intersection of financial services and PR and marketing, and we'll have anywhere from 10 to 15 of them a summer. A lot of them, the goal is for them to
Yeah.
stick around and contribute to the growth of our organization. But we have those junior associates that are alums that are at places like Edelman Financial Engines and Vanguard and SEI and Janney and all these places, and I look at that as, our contribution to the industry on that front. But it's something I think as we look at the fast-moving world, people that have grown up in this era where GEO is a talking point, and people have seen the rise of the influencer and things like that, having those same people see the opportunity in our space will be really important for the continued growth, because less than 10% of RIAs, 5 billion or bigger, have a CMO or similar appointed person in terms of running marketing, whether it's a growth title or EVP marketing, whatever it might be. We don't have that. And so to fill those seats, either they're going to be poaching from your teams, or there's going to be new people that have to be minted and grown, right? And so something I think we talk about the full destiny of this industry becoming sort of a well-known industry and household names within the industry growing up further. I think it's a big part of it. So I'll leave it there. Last thing we like to do on the podcast is giving our guests a parting shot. Um, I'd like for each of you frame your parting shot through the prism. What's your New Year's resolution for marketing in 2026? What are we doing? What advice would you give to someone who's trying to grow up their marketing a little bit or level up? Maybe it's a resolution for someone who's thinking about what to do next, or maybe something for yourself. But give us a parting shot. What's one bit of advice or a resolution that you might be having for your own firm? Sam, can I ask
Me
you
to
to
go
go?
first? Okay.
Yeah.
I would say I think going into 2026, I would say our resolution at Merit is to really lean into the connection between like global strategy and local execution. Because I really do believe that you have to have both to be successful. So we talked about, obviously, it's a long sales cycle. You're building trust. You have to have the content. You have to check all the boxes, and in a way that's not just checking the boxes. It feels personalized. It feels thoughtful. It feels intentional, which is a tall order. And that's why, working with a larger firm like Merit is beneficial to advisors, because you get all of that kind of taken care of, and then you get someone to walk alongside you to execute on your local community. So doing the sponsorships of the baseball team and being at the local Shriner events and all of that, to make sure that you have that kind of omnipresent, where you've got the big brand backing, lots of capabilities, checking all the boxes on content, digital, everything, but then you still have the take on what works in my community, and someone to help you execute that. If it's events, if it's COIs, if it's, that's, I think, going to be our biggest focus going into 2026, is striking the balance between those two things. And more important than balancing them is making sure that they are integrated and building off of each other.
Terrific. Tyler.
Yeah, I touched on some of the things that we're looking at as a firm related to 2026, but personally, I think what's interesting is we look back on 2024 and 2025 as marketers. We've been through this first wave of AI. AI was coming for the marketer. Like, let's be honest, it was creating content, and it's still very much that way. I mean, all the iterations on the new models are around bettering the content creation for, by and large. It's gathering information, creating videos, creating images, creating, blog posts, things of that nature. And so we've seen what AI can do to be transformative to how we operate. And so, what I'm looking at for 2026 is how I can apply that experience, having been through this first wave of AI, to other functional areas within the organization. I think the best thing to come of AI is not necessarily going to be the solution. I think it's going to be the mindset that really no area within the organization is safe from being corrected and fixed. We have a lot of things that are broken still in this industry. We have to live with them every day as firms, as operators. I know a lot of people that are listening feel the same way. And I think AI allows us now to sort of, look under the rug and see what, kind of mess has been created, and see how we can fix it. And I'm not saying AI is necessarily always going to be the solution, but oftentimes the solution is just having some smart people in the organization now look at it, whether that's operations, compliance, whether it's, retooling the marketing program, retooling the sales program, even the leadership structure, like all those things now. I think, as someone who's been through this first wave of AI, I now have the experience to look at these and say, okay, it's going to be okay, but we're going to take time now to make sure that we make this as optimized as we can.
Well, Tyler and Sam, you've really given us a lot to chew on. I really appreciate those final sentiments as well. Great having you both on this episode of Marketing Matchup. Appreciate your time and energy. Tyler Resh, Chief Growth Officer at SteelPeak Wealth, and Samantha Allen, EVP at Merit Financial. Thank you both for being part of the show.
Thanks, Joe. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Marketing Matchup, a production of Gregory. If you like what you heard, please listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.